Well, my Apple Watch just sent me a message that says that Beyond Belief Sobriety is live on Facebook. And we are. We're live on Facebook
Nice.
and we're live on YouTube. And it's great to be here again. Good. Thank you for joining us. So far, we have 6 people in the room, 7 people in the room. It'll be filling up here pretty soon. Please say hello. It'd be nice to see you out there. Okay, there's Angela and Bree. Oh, Bree. Oh, Bree. I got
All
a really
three. There's
nice.
actually 4 versions of the film Brie, so
What she says, she says, up thumbed even though I despise all 3 versions. Oh, really? Oh, I can't believe you despise it. And then Joe says that he didn't have time to watch it, unfortunately. Okay, well, that's all right. We might just spoil the movie for you though, Joe. But I guess you can close your ears when we get to the end, I guess. Maybe you want to just turn it off and listen to it later. I don't know. Hey, Jackie.
uh,
Jackie says she
yeah.
hasn't seen any of them.
This one's a really good version. I mean, yeah,
I
it
think
won
so.
awards and things like that. But I was looking at some of the clips that were important, and they made me cry again. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, so I think that it's worth seeing, even if you know the story and or you don't like Lady Gaga or whatever it is. I think it's worth seeing. There's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, there really is. And I know I've seen the one with Chris Christopherson and Barbara Streisand, but I can't really remember. Hey, Bob, I
There's
can't
nothing to remember on that one.
there isn't.
Yeah,
I
that's
honestly can't
definitely the worst one I've heard.
Is it?
I've watched the Judy Garland one
Okay, I've never
some
seen that
time
one.
ago, and yeah, and it was decent. But you know, I like this one. I think they did a good job
I think so too.
with most things in it.
Now,
So
Laughing Dog says there was a 30s version. It wasn't
yeah,
that. What was it? What was it
no,
called?
that was it was called A Star Is Born, and it was I can't remember who was in it. I don't think they seemed famous to me, but that
Oh,
was the first one, and then the Judy Garland one was the second one, and then the Chris Christopherson Barbara Streisand was third, and this one's fourth.
you know what movie I was thinking about? The Jazz Singer, because they've done that one like many times too, haven't they?
Uh,
That was like Al Jolson, and they remade it, and maybe they called it different things. And I thought that this was kind of, but this doesn't have anything to do with that. So anyway, I don't know why I'm going on about that because it's Friday and I've been working like a dog and I'm tired and I'm just silly. That's
and you give
regular
your
for me.
dog a treat.
I did
So
give my dog a treat. She's a good girl. Good girl. When she finishes her supper, she gets a brushy chew. Okay.
oh wow, okay.
So we are here to talk about A Star is Born, which is the 2018 film
Hmm.
starring Bradley Cooper as Jackson Maine, a successful musician who has a serious addiction to drugs and alcohol,
Hmm.
and Lady Gaga as Ally, a talented singer and songwriter in her own right, who was actually discovered by Jack one night when he's drinking in a bar. And she went on to become a Grammy winning performer herself. And the story, the movie, just kind of follows their relationship all through Jack's drinking and drugging up to the time that he went to treatment and came out of treatment. And it was a pretty cool experience. Like Angela, I will admit it, I was crying myself. So
Yeah.
it's a sad movie. So
Yeah, it is, but I think that it really hits on a lot of important points, and so besides there being uh, multiple different versions, I'm sorry, Joe, you're wrong. There's 4 versions of it, and I'll look up the other part, but I don't have another computer to use at the moment. But um, the what I was trying to say is that Bradley Cooper really wanted to make the movie because he had, a similar story to tell. He's in recovery, and and so he was trying to, think of a way, to talk about that. And some of his stuff is that stardom, fame, addiction, and his relationship with his dad. And so yeah, when he approached them to do this, it's coming from that place, and that I know he's been in 12-step recovery. He's talked about that before, and I think he really brought in a lot of good aspects that are relatable to anybody who's been suffered from addiction and those around them. And the backstories on both the main characters, I think, are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, do you remember Allie's?
Her backstory?
Yeah. So, kind of, she's when we see her in the movie,
Oh yeah.
she's working as a waitress,
Yeah.
and trying to do the singing thing, or has
Yeah.
tried, but it didn't work for sure. And she's basically, caregiver for her dad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not caregiver as in, he's, needing care, but just the relationship is it seems that she's more of the parent type.
Yeah, he was
And
kind of an odd bird in a way. What did he
yeah,
do anyway? Was he? I had a feeling that he was an undertaker, but that couldn't be right.
no, I think he was a driver. I think that
Oh, okay.
him and his buddies were professional drivers. Somebody can
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Jackson Maine's story was his mother died at childbirth,
That's
and
right.
his father raised him and his half brother, and then his father died at 13, and so then his brother basically kind
Did
of
his father
raised
commit
him.
suicide?
I don't remember. I didn't get a
Um,
chance to watch the movie again today.
or maybe no, that wasn't his father.
Yeah,
That
I
was
don't think so.
Jackson himself.
Yeah,
When
he
he was a kid.
attempted. Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
attempted suicide
When
when
he
he
was a
was
kid, because
13.
I remember
Yeah.
him talking to his brother about
Hmm.
that, and how I guess when he tried to do it, and he tried to hang himself, but he
Hmm.
broke the thing that he was
Yeah.
trying to hang himself. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So he had that. He had a difficult background
Hmm.
with that. His mother dying young, and then his father dying, and then being raised by his older brother. And it sounds like even as a child that he was dealing with depression. What
Yeah.
got me about that movie
Mm.
was in the beginning, when like the first part of the movie is following him around when he's like constantly high. Really,
Yeah.
he's constantly using coke and drinking, and he's just
Yeah.
stoned all the time. He's got a constant buzz on. But the way that they filmed it was really amazing to me, because I got the feeling that you're looking at the world through his eyes. It
Hmm.
was like you see everybody, and
Hmm.
it just reminded me of how I saw the world when I was drinking. It was just really, it really, that stood out to me as being pretty amazing how they did that.
Yeah.
There was some sort of a weird energy going on with the way that they filmed the first part when he was just high all the time. You know.
Right. Yeah. No, I think they did a good job with that. And it helped the storyline in that you could see, what life was like from his position. And
Mm-hmm.
then when it comes to, the fight that he gets in with his brother, and thinks his brother didn't tell him about, selling the ranch and stuff. And his brother said, I did, but you were too high to pay attention. You can remember, the beginning of the movie and think back to, oh yeah, his life was like that. It would be really hard to track that anything important was going on when you saw the world, kind of speeding past, and in this blur and start and stop type of a thing. So I thought that was excellent.
And I also noticed in the beginning, when he was doing his drinking, like he'd drink before he'd go on. No, he'd drink after he got off, and he would snort cocaine before he got on stage and everything.
Mhm.
And I had the feeling that he was oblivious to the fact that this could be a problem.
Mm,
That he was just kind of doing it and going through the motions. And usually in a movie like that, like this, there always seems to be some moment where the addict realizes they have a problem. There was that moment, and maybe we'll get to
mhm.
that later. Now I
Yeah.
remember, okay, what
Yeah. I was
happened.
going to say,
He
yeah.
had that pop problem where he realized, then he had to go, okay, I guess I'm going ahead of myself a little bit. But yeah, he was kind of, to me, it seemed like he was oblivious, because you didn't really see him kind of struggling with the idea that, oh man, I really shouldn't drink before I go on stage or anything like that. But he was definitely having relationship problems, like you said, with his brother,
Hmm.
They got in a fight and his brother quit. His brother was acting as the manager, his stage
Hmm.
manager.
Yeah. 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 I got the sense that maybe he knew, he was physically suffering, but that it was just what he had to do. So I didn't get the feeling that he was, actively seeking uh, to quit or, make that connection. But I don't know. I guess the way they filmed it, I felt the physical suffering, which I think
Mm,
is also a great thing in how they filmed the show, is that I felt how terrible that they were showing him,
mm-hmm,
and trying to, function in that kind of environment, or
mm-hmm.
any kind of environment when you're that loaded all the time. So yeah.
Joe says that the movie is more than about addiction. It's about the cruelty of showbiz, making it to the
Hmm.
top and how it can't last.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to,
So
it does, touch on that.
it does. It
There is,
does.
the stuff with her manager,
Yeah.
the guy who becomes, and I meant to look up who that was because, he did such a great job. I mean, I hate him just, thinking about it. And so, that's some great acting when you can make somebody, still, hate the thought of that character.
Mm-hmm.
so I should look that up because yeah, he did an amazing job with being a complete asshole. um you
So
know
should we kind of go through the movie?
yeah,
Kind of
sure.
okay. So it's I think it kind of starts with him playing on stage to a large crowd, and then
Hmm.
afterwards, when he's done at the show, he gets in his limo and he's down some whiskey or what vodka or whatever it is, and the driver takes him off and he looks for a bar.
Hmm.
And so they find a bar. He goes in, and he's a well known musician. He's a celebrity, and
Yeah.
he goes into it turns out to be a drag bar,
Yeah,
and
which wouldn't work for me because I don't really know country singers. So
yeah,
yeah, so
he
that
was
part
kind of
is
bluesy. His
is
music was
not
more.
believable to me because yeah, I'd be like, no, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
I liked the style of his music, but I thought it was more like blues. To me, it seemed more like blues. But you're right; it was kind of country, wasn't it? But
Yeah.
anyway, so he goes into this place, and he's drunk like he always is, and people recognize him. He During the movie, people would always come up to him because they recognized him, his
Hmm.
celebrity, and it didn't seem to phase him.
Hmm.
But he in this bar, Lady Gaga performed, and
Hmm.
he just was amazed at how talented she was.
Yeah, so I think part of this part of the story too is that, he's just looking for his next drink, like he has
Exactly.
to get his next fix. So he stumbles into this bar and doesn't realize that it's actually a drag bar.
He doesn't
and
realize
and
it.
and that's the other, odd thing about it is that Lady Gaga, is performing,
Uh-huh.
at this, drag bar,
Right.
because her friends are there and stuff, and so she, does this act, this tribute thing, but is actually singing and stuff. and
Yeah,
and so yeah, so it's just, an interesting little, tidbit that they put in there, that
it
he's,
is.
just searching for,
Yeah,
his next
exactly. He didn't
high, his
care what kind of
fix. He
bar. He
didn't
didn't care if it was a
care.
gay bar,
Yeah.
straight. He didn't care
Yeah.
what it
And
was.
so yeah, so it's interesting. But yeah,
Yes.
that's how they meet.
Hmm. And so he's pretty amazed with her talent, and he is intrigued by her,
Mhm.
and eventually I don't know how he got he got to her, and he wanted her to go to a concert with him. And is this right, Angela? And then she finally went to the concert, and
Mhm.
where he was performing, and stood behind stage, and he asked him to perform a song that she wrote, right?
Well, so there's, before that, they kind of, hang out with each other and go to
Oh
the
yeah.
what is it, the grocery
Oh,
store
that's
parking
right.
lot
That's
or
right.
whatever. And so that's how the whole, she's an aspiring,
That's right.
songwriter and
That's
stuff
right.
comes about too. So they
She
kind
punched
of,
some guy in the face, right? Because
yeah,
he was bothering him with his celebrity,
yeah,
and she thought it was
yeah.
disrespectful.
Right. And so that was one of the things that I thought was interesting that they put in there was, in codependency, how I thought she played an excellent codependent on that of that, he doesn't care what the person's doing, and so she's protecting him from
Mm,
this when it's his deal. If he didn't
right.
want the person, you know, harassing him or taking pictures or whatever, he could have dealt with it. But
Right. It didn't bother him at all.
as a codependent, that she, had to jump in there to
Mm-hmm.
save him, and I thought it was also a good example of it, because most often when we think of codependency and stuff, we think of somebody, kind of scuttling around behind the scenes trying to make sure that the person's okay and has what they need, and that everybody thinks everything's okay. And yet this is also part of it where, they're actually the ones fighting and doing stuff that's outrageous as well. So, I appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so he learns that she can write, and she can
Mm-hmm.
write songs, she can write music, and she can sing beautifully. Of course, she's Lady Gaga. Um,
Yeah.
but so he gets her to go to a concert where he's performing, and she gets on stage and sings, and next thing you know, she is discovered as a huge talent in her own right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how the story goes.
Yep. And then, so he's continuing to drink all this time. I don't think, do you notice that she was bothered by it at all at this point in the story? I don't think.
Yeah, I think it was that, there were some things, but for the most part, she was in kind of like a caregiving, partnership anyway, and so minimized quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And that it was, kind of how their relationship came together. And they talk about that a little bit later in one of the rehab scenes,
Mm,
when he's getting ready to come home, or when they're talking about if he's going to come home, and that she shows concern because, that's part of his thing, is when they're together, that he seems to go into his addiction,
mm-hmm.
and so she's like, so if you don't want to come home, and
Oh,
and he
yeah.
tries to remind her that, he wasn't drunk the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
but there's definitely a dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. Their relationship, when he goes to treatment, I guess we
Mhm.
can go there now, but yeah. So anyway, during this whole thing, oh boy, so they go through this whole story where he's drinking, and she becomes discovered, and
Right.
yeah, so she becomes a huge celebrity, and this manager guy gets his claws into her. I
Hmm.
didn't really like this guy in the movie.
Yeah,
um
he did an excellent job of being dislikable.
yeah, he really did. And so he said that he was going to make her a success. So he wanted to make her blonde and do all this stuff, make her dance with dancers and all this stuff that she wasn't, and she just wanted to be herself. But anyway, she kind of did what he was suggesting, and she did become very, very successful.
Hmm.
And in fact, she got nominated for a Grammy and won a Grammy.
Hmm.
And so she goes to the awards show, and when she's being recognized and being given her award, she's going up on stage, and Jack, who did a performance just before that at the show, was going to go up on stage, but he was so drunk, and he ended
Hmm.
up like really embarrassing her. He passed out, and her father was mad at him. Everybody was just disgusted with him because, this was her great moment, and he just messed it up.
Yeah, I think he peed himself, the whole
Mm,
thing, at the Grammys. So yeah, and with that, that leads him to go
to
to rehab.
treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is interesting when he goes to treatment.
Hmm.
They, what I found interesting about it, I guess, is when she visited him,
Hmm.
and he he was coming out of it. I mean, he was getting to understand how screwed up he was,
Right.
and how he hurt people.
Hmm.
And he started crying because he said something to her that hurt her.
Hmm.
Didn't he call her ugly or something? I can't
Um,
remember, something like that, because she didn't think she was very pretty. She didn't think
mhm,
she was good looking, and she thought that and even her father, I think, said something like that, and she thought that would was holding her career back. But
mhm,
so he said something like that to her, and it really hurt her. Anyway, that and maybe some other things. But the bottom line is, when he was in treatment and he was getting clean, he felt the pain. Oh man, he felt the pain of everything that he was killing with his drugs and alcohol.
mhm.
And that little incident where he was apologizing to her and he started crying was just all of the pain coming up and out of him, you know?
Yeah.
And I related to that. It's just, you know, when I was in my addiction, and I'm looking back at it now, it's clear that I was numbing myself and that I had a lot of pain, but you don't really deal with it and you don't really feel it until you stop drinking. And when he got there, man, it was really amazing, his performance anyway, and the way that he carried that off. I thought was it was a pretty touching moment, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I was impressed by it
And that's where
because
she
he
was.
fulfilled that. Yeah.
And then he gets out of treatment. I know I missed some parts of the movie, but anyway, he gets out of treatment and he goes anyway. They get married, but they got married. No, they got married
Yeah.
before
They were
yeah,
married before that. So.
yeah. There was one night he got drunk and hung out with some friends of his. And anyway, they got married. But anyway, so they go back home,
Mhm,
and they start having problems with their relationship, because this is what you were talking about, Angela, where she says, "Do
mhm,
you sure you want to come back?" You know,
mhm,
because she knew him as the drinking person, and he wasn't that, and he was so sensitive and vulnerable. I felt
mhm.
at that moment in his life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he was realizing
And
all the
she
damage
knew,
he'd done.
yeah, and she knew that too, and so that's why they get to that point of where um, she wants to bring him on her next tour because he just got out of rehab and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want him to be alone, and the company won't do that, and so she decides to cancel it so that she
Mm-hmm.
can be home with him to help him in his recovery. And that's when the the bad man,
Yeah.
her her agent, comes to the house when she's not there, and tells Jack off about how he's ruined her career, and all the terrible things that he thinks about him, and that and Jack finds out that she could have done the tour, but she chose not to, and she told him that they just decided not to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
so she lied to him about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bad man leaves, and Jack's left feeling like he has ruined his wife's career and
Yeah.
is nothing but a problem for her.
Yeah. And so then the movie ends, I guess, with him ending his life.
Yeah.
And he and so it was a different kind of a movie from what I'm used to seeing, in that there was no happy ending. Um, he couldn't get into recovery. I think that he was just at such a vulnerable point in his life. He was so sensitive, and he just
Hmm.
didn't have any self confidence, so that when that manager um, attacked him like that,
Hmm.
he didn't have the ability to deal with it.
Yeah, he didn't have the ability to deal with it. He hadn't developed, a strong community. He had a couple of people, but it was too early. And also, the I think the meaning he added in his mind was that his wife had lied about it, and that
Mm,
and not that he he hated his wife. She's a liar, so I'm going to kill myself. But that she couldn't tell him the truth, and it was because of his alcoholism. And so I think that's what played into it, or what they were going for with all of that scene and that information, was not only the guilt that he had um, from the truth about the stuff that he had done and what the manager said about him, but that it was emphasized by the fact that she hadn't been honest with him about just canceling it. And so it all pointed to him, to reinforcing that he was destroying her career.
And oh yeah, okay. And then at the very end of the movie, when she is grieving with his brother,
Yeah.
and he says to her that it's not her fault,
Hmm.
it's not his fault, it's Jack's fault.
Yeah, and that's definitely the scene that even if you don't want to watch the whole movie, that people might check out. I think one of the things I think is important and relatable about that is he talks about I think they call it the 12 notes. What is
Oh,
it?
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that music is essentially 12 notes between an octave.
Mm-hmm.
12 notes, and the octave repeats. It's the same story told over and over forever. Any artist can offer the world, all any artist can offer the world is how they see those 12 notes. And and that's something that she relates to. He
Mm-hmm.
told her the same story, or that they could appreciate together.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that he loved about her was the way that she sees and plays those 12 notes. And it reminded me of, in recovery, that the only thing we as individuals really have to offer other people who are struggling is our story, our 12 notes, and how we see recovery, how we see our journey and such. And that, we're all kind of on the same journey, we just
Mm-hmm.
have experienced it differently and see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I liked that part, and I thought it was helpful, particularly for things like this podcast, and the information and stuff we talk about each week, and the people you interview and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I wonder if there's a point, if I'm being helpful, or if it's just you and I having a conversation each week and entertaining each other. And so when I heard that again this evening, that scene, and it reminded me of that. That's kind of all I have to do, and all I have to offer is my perspective
Mm-hmm.
on recovery and
Mm-hmm.
how I do it. And that's going to be helpful to some people and not helpful to others, and that's okay.
You do make a difference. I got a voicemail message from Jacinta, and spoke with her, called her. She left a message on the same number that you can call into the show, and
Oh.
she mentioned you, Angela, and how helpful these live streams have been. She listens to these, I think, after they have been done and everything. She's not listening
Hmm.
live, and all the past podcasts. She's been in AA since the 1980s,
Oh.
and has always been an atheist, and has struggled with that,
Hmm.
because she wasn't finding support in her local community for being a non-believer. And anyway, so she stumbled upon the podcast, and she started listening to all these episodes, and she said that it just like totally was like liberating for her, and
Good.
it meant a tremendous amount to her to hear all those stories.
Oh, good.
And yeah, so she mentioned, I'll forward you her email, her voicemail, so you can listen to it. But every once in a
Yeah.
while you hear something like that. And I told her, I said, thank you for telling me that. It, it's humbling to hear that. It's
Hmm.
good to hear that. But like you say, Angela, sometimes I think I'm just here having fun. I'm just here. I'm just here doing something I like to do.
Right.
But you're right. It's just like a song. You've got all you have are 12 notes, and
Mhm.
however you use that to tell the story, to put a message out there, is what you do. And our 12 notes is this. Is kind of
Yeah.
in a sense what we're doing here. So
Yeah.
everybody's got their own way. So yeah, it's I like that part of the movie too. I thought it was pretty. I thought that was pretty neat. I didn't even know that about music. I know nothing about music, so
Well, now you'll learn. And you
yeah,
probably have a sense of it because, we were talking before the show started, when I come on and he checks the audio, and anybody that has good audio, John gets excited
I
about.
do.
And yeah, so
Oh,
something about
you know what's
about it.
funny? During the movie, when they were singing, I knew what kind of microphone they were using. I said, "Oh, that's a
Ooh.
Shure SM58."
Oh,
I
you
knew.
definitely need to like be hanging out with, a group of fellow nerds, fellow sound nerds, huh?
Yep, yep. So anyway, it's yeah, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
So
You're
what?
right, Bree. That is the secret of service work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else can we say about this movie? I mean, we've kind of gone through it pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah. Does anybody else, have anything to say about
Yeah,
the
you can
movie,
call us at 844-899-8278. I think a lot of
Yeah.
them haven't seen it. They've been talking about this kit, a starter kit from Secular Student Alliance,
Mm.
where they can get atheist flags and atheist signs, and
Mm.
they think they want to distribute them at the county fair. And that's what they're talking about.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
it's their atheist revolution out there.
All right. Yeah. Well, you have some music, from this movie that you can throw in there as well that you can march to or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was interesting that the main song, in there, "Shallow," that won the award and stuff. That I like it. It's a good song,
Mm-hmm.
but then I tried to look at the words and analyze it, and it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, interesting. So yeah, so it downgraded as a great song in my mind. I think she has some better ones,
Yeah.
but it is amazing the chemistry that they had together in the movie, and that they have shown in the promoting of the movie, that made me want to see it as well, as that they seem to have such great chemistry. And I think he was talking about that, like when he first met her, because he's like this movie star, he didn't actually know what she looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't know that much about her, even though she's like this super pop star. And that he found that she was like really just very present and
Mm-hmm.
real in
Mm-hmm.
person, and that's part of what made it work so well for them. He thought the whole thing was very therapeutic for him. And yeah, and she does look so different without her meat suit and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she did a great job. I didn't think she was um, super, award-winning
Right.
job,
Right.
but I thought he did, I thought he
Yeah.
really couldn't have played, that part any better.
Yeah, I agree.
Like he
His
took
acting was
lessons on how to sing and how to lower his voice and get that, what is it, gravelly type sound and everything.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that he really kind of had Sam Elliott, who played his brother, as in mind for kind of how he wanted to sound. So I thought that was interesting as well.
That Sam Elliott has such a deep voice. It's hard for me to hear what he's saying.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, and the accent and stuff,
Uh-huh.
yeah, he definitely did. Um, there was like a quote. What was it that I think I was reading an article that Bradley Cooper was talking about, inviting Sam to his house to pitch this idea to him, and was saying that the character that he wanted to play, or how he wanted to play that him, was kind of, he did an impression of Sam Elliott, and and that he wasn't sure what he was gonna think, and he used the word, like, he wasn't sure if he was gonna think he was a sycophant. And I'm like, I've heard that word before, but I don't know what it means, so I had to look it up. And it's a person who acts, the definition they gave is a person who acts um obsquicious, what is it, yeah, obsquiciously, yeah, towards someone important in order to gain advantage. But then I had to look up that word, which is obsequious, and I'm like, that's really it amuses me when I have to look up a word from a definition of another word. And that one means obedient or attentive to an excessive or servile degree. And so basically it's just somebody who's not being genuine, and overdone, or brown nose, or that kind of a thing.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, that amused me in the thinking of this movie, and in looking up some information on it, was just that I had to go through several definitions of words that I don't use very often, and it made me laugh.
Karen left a very nice message there. Thank you, Karen, from Victoria, Australia. It's nice to hear that. It's always nice to hear that. And I'm glad that we can bring, different perspectives to recovery out there. There are so many great recovery podcasts too. It's just it's quite it's a useful tool for people in recovery, a podcast. Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Karen, very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. It's been nice to do this, and to hear from everybody, and know that they get something out of it, and that they're hearing that there's different ways to recover, and different ways within AA as well, since it is still the easiest accessible way to do something about your drinking when you're concerned about it.
Is that the truth too? I tell you, the one thing I've learned the most, I guess, that might surprise some people that aren't familiar with atheist and agnostic people in AA, but there's a huge variety of experiences. Some work the steps, some don't work the steps. It's just amazing. The wide range and different paths just within that one little community. And, I just feel like that's the way that AA probably is at large, whether you're secular or not. I think people are kind of doing their own unique things. Maybe they kind of get together in their groups and they kind of have their group talk and stuff, but I don't know. It's just, that's the one thing I've learned. And it's like, you cannot, like, if you're an atheist in AA, you can't just assume that anything about what that person does with their program. They could actually even be an atheist and pray. I've had people that do that.
Yeah.
I have atheists on the podcast who love the big book, and then atheists who hate the big book. So it's just like,
yeah. Somebody amazing. Said that I was the most spiritual atheist they ever met. And,
exactly.
And that's not something that I would have, labeled myself, but that, that's the way they see it. And there truly are people who consider themselves atheists and pray every day. And, I know people who are atheist and go to the big atheist conferences, like the ones with Sam Harris and, Dawkins and all of that. And also go to Lutheran service on Sundays and don't see anything wrong with it. It fits within their concept of, how things work, it's fascinating. But I think this last year has been really, interesting, seeing how many people have found, more people like themselves, or somebody that, gives them the hope that they can get or stay sober, or, stay within, AA if that's where they want to be, because, because there are more options. It's caused people to have to get out of their bubble a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing when you break down all the borders and all the barriers and people can just go to a meeting wherever they want? It does open up a whole new, perspective, different ways of thinking about their program, and just, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, my group is starting to meet in person again.
Hmm.
And I've only attended one of those meetings. I think Bree is going, and I need to start making a commitment to get back there. I don't. It's interesting. I popped on to one of the online meetings, and it was like full house, man. Lots and lots of people there. But I think that the in person meetings are going a little bit slower.
Hmm.
There were a couple of times where Kana was the only one at the there,
Hmm.
so I don't know what's going on with that. It might take a while for people, I think, to feel comfortable going
Yeah.
to in person meetings again.
Yeah.
Um, it's like they just lifted the mask mandate here,
Hmm.
after the CDC came out with their guidelines about people who are vaccinated not needing to wear a mask.
Hmm.
And it's weird. I actually got my hair cut the other day, and I had my mask on, and she told me,
Hmm.
"Oh, you don't have to wear a mask." And if you've been vaccinated, I said, "Yeah, I've been vaccinated." And the person cutting my hair, she's been vaccinated, and she said, "As long as it's okay with you two, you don't have to wear a mask." And I felt kind of weird. I said, "Okay." And so I did. I got my hair cut without wearing a mask, which was, weird.
Hmm.
It felt very strange. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but
It's fine.
but it's the same way. I mean, going to meetings too. I
Hmm.
mean, it's going to feel weird, I think, in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
For some
having
people. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it might probably be weird because
Right.
everything's
Yeah.
weird to me. I make a
Yeah.
big deal out of
My
everything.
mom had asked me the other day, about, any meetings that we're meeting in person that I know of, because there's somebody in her religious community who has realized that she's developed a drinking problem during the pandemic.
Mm,
And I, so my mom was asking if any meetings are meeting live again. And I said, there's been meetings that have been meeting live during the whole thing. So I don't know if those are the ones that, your person in your religious community would feel comfortable at, though. And
yeah.
so yeah. But I agree, and I think that there's also some, research and some things that we still, need to understand about, how the virus acts
Yeah.
in people who are vaccinated.
Yeah.
I do have a friend in recovery whose son has been vaccinated with, both the shots, and needed to go on a trip and had to get 2 COVID tests
Mm,
proving that he, did not have COVID in order to leave. And the second one came back positive, but he
wow.
wasn't sick at all. And so there's the good thing in that,
Yeah, you don't get
yeah,
sick.
he tested positive, but he was completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we still don't know for sure, if somebody who tests positive is and
Can give it
has
to
been
someone else.
vaccinated, yeah, can, how contagious they are, and anything about that. So, so I think that some people are still wearing masks because, there are still some unknowns about it. And then there's some people who are now wearing masks because they think that those of us who are vaccinated are expelling proteins that will cause them to get sick with
Oh
something
no.
else.
Oh no.
And so yeah, so I'm like, well, I guess they're it's helping people who aren't getting vaccinated wear masks. So I guess it works out. I'm just confused if the proteins have the microchips in them that I was supposed to get with mine, because I don't want to be giving away my microchips. I waited a whole year for those. So yeah, so it's an interesting time, but yeah, for
Yeah, to
meetings,
say the
I
least.
don't, yeah, I don't think that ours is starting in person. I think part of that too is that at least with ours, the Unitarian Fellowship here usually doesn't meet a lot during the summer. The minister takes the summer off, and so they usually have somebody, a lay minister, do the Sunday gathering, talks and stuff like that. And so, they're usually not very active during the summer anyway. So I think that's another reason why our group may not start going until the fall. And I don't know if that's the same for other groups that have meet in Unitarian fellowship. So, if anybody else does, let me know what your group is doing and how that's working. But
We
thus
meet in
far,
one. We meet in a Unitarian Universalist church,
yeah.
and they said we can go to our meetings. We were going to follow the CDC guidelines as far as social distancing and mask wearing, and we were going to meet
Mm-hmm.
in the bigger room and maybe even outside when we could.
Uh-huh.
But now with the new CDC guidelines, someone sent me an email asking me if I could contact them to ask them what they want us to do about the mask thing now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm gonna email her back and say, you know what, Kana, you can
Mm-hmm.
start calling these. You can start calling the church yourself because you're the one who's basically running the group now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
she's something else. She's been
That
sober, I
makes
think,
sense.
for 3 years now, and she's really loves her sobriety, and she's been a huge help to that group. It's
Well,
incredible.
good.
It's been fun watching her in her recovery, but she's excited about getting back to in-person meetings again. And
Yeah,
um,
I think it is important that I know that the church around the corner from where I live is holding their first in-person service inside the building on
yeah,
Sunday, and that there's some excitement and some trepidation
mm,
regarding that. There's still going to be masking
yeah,
and following the indoor guidelines for large groups and
yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, it's an interesting transition
The
for
church where we
for
meet
a lot of
doesn't have
us.
services yet. They're still kind of officially closed, but they're only opening for small groups like ours.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So we'll see how things develop. I suppose,
yeah.
but it's yeah, still an interesting time. And with the online meetings, I'm finding that some people who have found, secular AA meetings, they just enjoy going to meetings someplace other than where they live.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I don't know, I think that's probably going to continue for a while. And it might be, helpful for people because of either, the community they live in. If it's an AA community where it's very much, the big book and Bible thumping or,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, then yeah, they'll still really need the online secular meetings in order to have community and
Yeah.
such. And it'll help those that are really concerned about anonymity too, because they can
Yeah.
still, log on wherever they're at to a meeting wherever
Mm-hmm.
it's at, and not have to worry about getting their anonymity violated or broken or whatever it is. And so yeah, I think that can be really helpful for some people. So I know that we're still going to keep doing our Thursday one and our Tuesday one until they can do the live one on Tuesdays. But I'm still enjoying my Thursday one, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's mostly made up of people not from Boise,
Right.
and I love that group. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, figuring out how to keep that going, and yeah, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's really added a lot to my recovery. This
Yeah.
last year, it's changed quite a bit. And you can tell that if you go back and look at some of the podcasts that we
Mm-hmm.
did on secular versions of the
Mm-hmm.
12 steps. I've already adjusted my thoughts on quite a few of them, and learned some new things that
Yeah.
I think are much more helpful
Mm-hmm.
for recovery. And yeah, and so it's been a year of growth.
somebody one of these days someone's going to say is going to criticize you for something that you said on a podcast, and they're going to you're going to say, well, that was like 5 years ago. I don't think
Yeah, they can do that now. I mean, that was
yeah.
what, like 2 years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
and I already think differently on a couple of things. But
I get that
yeah,
sometimes. It's like, you believe this and that, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, I don't anymore. I believed it on that day and at that time, but actually, not now.
yeah, yeah.
So
No,
it's kind of weird, but
that's the whole thing with growing, hopefully, is that
yeah.
yeah, you get new information and consider it and change your position. It's the scientific method, people. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
You have a hypothesis of how things are going or work, and then you look around and somebody else gives you some new information, and that changes what your original thing was, or it shows you that you were not correct or misguided in your previous hypothesis, and so you adjust and continue on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Bree posted here about having 40 people in the room. I think that's,
wow.
I don't know if we've ever had that many in a face-to-face meeting before. We've had maybe, I don't think we've ever had that many in a face-to-face meeting before.
Yeah.
And she sent me a text telling me that they were amazed that they saw a larger percentage, or I guess an equity in the number of male and female,
Mhm.
participants, because so often, you might be the only woman there, it's like, and all
Right.
guys and stuff. So that was nice for the women in the group to see that. Be nice for anybody actually to see that, to see more diversity and balance, I guess, in the meeting like that. Tracy, what is AO? AA and AO.
All others. So it's
Oh,
it's the name of
atheist,
my home
agnostics, and
group.
all
Yeah.
others. That's right.
Yeah. We call
Yay.
it AA and AO, but it's
Mm-hmm.
atheist, agnostics, and all
Oh,
others.
Joe was asking the same question. I was thinking it was
Yeah.
like some other program. There's like
Yeah.
a.
I'm sure there is an AO. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so A Star is Born. We talked about that and had a little bit of a chat about going back to meetings and so forth. We still have about 9 minutes left. If anybody has something else they think we should talk about, you can just type it in there in the
Yeah.
comments section, or give us a call at 844-899-8278. I don't have anything more to say about this movie other than I liked it. It did make me cry. I don't mind crying anymore. It was good to do.
Good for you. Did
Yeah,
your
yeah.
did your wife watch it?
No, she didn't want to watch it.
Yeah.
She's into some British show. She loves I don't know what it's a British cooking show,
Oh,
and they like make pastries and stuff. And she watches this
yeah, the
and she
Great
loves it.
British Baking Show or Great
Mm-hmm.
British Bake
Yeah,
Off.
because it's some sort of competition. Like
Yeah.
I see little bits of it where they criticize each other's pastry or something. I don't know.
They don't. They have judges that do that.
Okay, okay.
That's one of the great things about that show, is that the people are very kind to each other,
Okay.
and they don't criticize each other's bakes,
Okay.
and you don't throw your bake in the bin. Yeah, you
Okay.
can learn a lot of great language and
Yeah.
English terminology from that.
Yeah.
So I learned that that you don't throw your bake in the bin,
Okay.
and that's just not allowed.
Oh, you and Susan
And
will get along. You can just watch the
oh
show with
yeah,
her.
I'm gonna. Yeah, we'll have to set up a hangout time. I've watched all of them, all
Uh-huh.
seasons, both American and British versions, and
Okay.
yeah, my mom and I are really into that show. So yeah, well, good for her. I was just curious if as
No,
a
she
a
didn't want to watch it.
non addict alcoholic, what she saw from it.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan thought it was okay. When he saw it. But yeah, didn't have the feels as much as I did, and most of mine were really from Bradley Cooper's
Yeah.
acting, and
Yeah.
I really just think that he channeled all of us,
Ah,
and I could feel it. So
me too. That part when he was in treatment and he was just kind of realizing what an asshole he was and how much damage he had done. And I remember one time he said something like he was trying
Hmm.
to do something. She suggested that he be something a certain way or whatever, and he said
Hmm.
he's trying. But that was really moving and brought tears to my eyes. And then of course the end when he died, and that last scene
Hmm.
when because I survived a loved one who committed suicide,
Hmm.
and it was the impression in my brain of that time, it will never leave me.
Hmm.
And when he told her it's not your fault,
Yeah.
um, that was just I still when I think about it,
Hmm.
because that was the first thing that I thought was my
Hmm.
fault. It's my
Right.
fault. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then when they said no, it wasn't really anybody's fault. When they said no, it's nobody's fault. It's his fault. It wasn't really his fault either. It was just he was just he needed a lot of help. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, sometimes that's the end result. Sometimes we don't make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Karen's last comment here, we can go to that. She says,
Mm.
do you have any experience of when a member shares being stressed or anxious and older sober says it's the distance from God? Oh boy. How to say it could be the brain, not God. So you're at a meeting
Hmm.
and some older person, someone is anxious and stressed
Hmm.
about something, and someone
Hmm.
says that they need to get closer to God.
Mm. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it does happen.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I guess you know what. You could just go over to the person. You could say when it's your turn.
Hmm.
You know what? I don't believe in God, and I think it's just put some caring people in your life, and that might help. That's what I do. And you don't even give them advice. Just
Hmm.
tell them what you do. I mean, I surround myself with people who love me and care about me and want the same thing for me that I want for myself, and that's what helps me. I don't think that there's a God that helps me. And also, as we talked many times, therapy helps
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Definitely. Depending on what it is, I share
yeah,
the
depending on
different
yeah,
tools, that I use for that.
yeah,
Right now I'm when I feel anxious and or frustrated, whatever, I'm looking at my sleep. How am I doing with my sleep? I tend to be more anxious or snap at people, that I
yeah,
care
yeah.
about
Me too.
more. I'm less patient if, I don't have enough sleep. And so, I would say something along those lines. Most of the meetings I attend, people don't talk like that
No,
anymore,
yeah, no.
so yeah, so at some point, if I attend a more traditional meeting where that's said, then I'll think about what would be helpful. But in general, that's what I do. If something like that comes out of somebody else's mouth, I respond to what I think would have been helpful for me to hear after that.
Yeah,
What would have been helpful for somebody to say, after that statement that I would have needed to hear. And oftentimes it's just something along the lines of that we all have different experiences
yeah, I do.
and different things that are helpful to us. And and that this is a good place to come and talk about those feelings, and to hear a variety of experience, strength, and hope. And usually that also helps other people in the room to step up. If they're spacing off, they're like, oh wait, yeah, I'm supposed to share my experience, strength and hope, and reminds them of what it's like when you're new. So I think oftentimes people who've been in recovery for a long time or in AA for a long time, forget, what it's
Yeah.
like when you're new
Oh
and
yeah.
you're feeling so stressed and
Yeah.
want to crawl out of your skin and stuff like that. And so, and because they forget, they say things like, "Oh, I just give it to God,"
Yeah. Oh,
rather than, I journal, or I call a friend, or I call my sponsor, or a loved one, and I go for a walk, and those kinds of things, which I find to be helpful, and I found helpful when people shared them with me.
Boy, we got Lewis. Yes, Lewis, we do this every Friday. Mark, I don't know why you can't see the comments in Facebook. You might want to start watching on YouTube. I don't know. Spoiler alert, just because it happened that way last time could be different next time
Mm.
I watch. Okay, yeah, I guess so. Okay. Um, when you were when Karen's comment, going back to that,
Mhm.
about being told that God is the problem or your answer or whatever,
Mhm.
I was thinking to myself, I don't know how I survived my early days, because I recall actually people saying, John, you know what your problem is? You're a self-centered alcoholic and you need to get on your knees and you need to
Mhm.
blah 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 blah. I don't know how I survived all that, because that really wasn't my core belief. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? But I just kind of said, okay, whatever, maybe so.
Yeah.
But did I
Maybe
ever tell you
that
the
maybe
story
that's
about?
part of the good thing about being, having your brain go through withdrawals and stuff, is
Yeah.
that everything sounds crazy. And so, maybe that, was realistic in your mind, and you're like,
Mm,
okay, we'll see what happens,
see what
because,
happens. Yeah.
yeah.
I want to end with this little story. I probably told it before, but this
Hmm.
is what happens. You start, and you get a little older, you start telling the same stories over and over again. But
Yep.
anyway, so I've only been sober maybe a couple of months, and I was at a midnight meeting in Kansas City, Kansas. I know I've told the story to you, Angela.
Mhm.
And I'm just sitting here all worried. I'm anxious and stressed, like Karen's friend in the meeting was, because I have a pending court date for a DUI.
Mhm.
I lost my apartment. I don't have a job. I have all these problems. And they were talking about something about how God is the answer to your problems or some bullshit like that. And I just said something like, I'm tired. Please don't tell me about God. Please, I just need to hear some concrete, practical, talk about what's going on. And somebody threw the 12 and 12 at me. They threw it at me, and they said, you need to read this book or something like that. It was like crazy. But it was like they put me in my place, because I was really kind of screaming out. I was like, can someone please just talk like a regular person, please? Just like a regular person, and not tell me to pray and talk to God and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, enough of that. So I survived. I made it.
You did. You did.
So all those people, they didn't keep me. I didn't say, well, fuck it. I stick with
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah. Well,
I think
and
that's the
we're
thing.
grateful that, that you stuck around, because we wouldn't be connected right now if
Boomer
it weren't
time.
for you. So
Boomer time, Joe says. It's
I
funny.
know.
All right, guys. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just play regular music. This music sounds weird on the live stream, but anyway. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. Lewis, welcome to the live stream, and hopefully see you here again Friday. It's been a blast. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a nice weekend if you can, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.